The War Against Thinking, Bonhoeffer's warning in the age of artificial stupidity. What if I told you that stupidity isn't just the absence of intelligence, but a far more dangerous force? A parasitic condition of the mind that can transform even the brightest individuals into instruments of destruction? What if the true threat to civilization isn't evil people doing evil things, but ordinary people who have quietly surrendered their will to think? We like to imagine that intelligence is a shield, that smart people are immune to propaganda, mass hysteria, and moral failure. But history tells a different story. And today, that story is repeating itself with terrifying precision. The collapse of independent thought. Imagine this: a renowned scientist, with years of academic training and countless accolades, begins sharing conspiracy theories on social media. A beloved teacher, known for compassion and reason, starts endorsing divisive ideologies that dehumanize entire groups. A caring parent, desperate to protect their children, makes decisions that put them in harm's way based on viral misinformation. These are not villains. They are not ignorant or evil. They are people like you and me, thoughtful, decent, and well-meaning, who become victims of what Dietrich Bonhoeffer called one of the most dangerous forces in human society: stupidity. But this is not the stupidity of jokes or memes. It's not ignorance in the sense of being uninformed. Bonhoeffer was pointing to something much darker, a kind of moral and intellectual paralysis, where the capacity for reflection, reasoning, and self-correction is shut down, not by force, but by social and psychological pressure. And this isn't happening to other people. It's happening to all of us. Right now. Stanley Milgram and the Machinery of Obedience. This isn't just philosophical speculation. In 1961, Yale psychologist Stanley Milgram conducted a groundbreaking study to understand obedience to authority. In his infamous experiment, participants were instructed to deliver electric shocks to a stranger, believing the shocks were real. As the voltage increased and the recipient's fake screams grew louder, participants hesitated, but 65% continued administering shocks to what they believed was a fatal level, simply because an authority figure told them to. These weren't sociopaths. They were ordinary people, teachers, engineers, secretaries, who, under the weight of authority and pressure, suspended their moral judgment. Milgram's experiment echoed what Bonhoeffer had seen firsthand in Nazi Germany: the terrifying ease with which normal, intelligent individuals become tools of destruction when they stop thinking for themselves. Bonhoeffer's crucial insight. Born in 1906 into a highly intellectual German family, Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a theologian and pastor. His father was a renowned psychiatrist. His upbringing was steeped in reason, debate, and academic rigor. He believed in the power of education, the sanctity of truth, and the moral compass of Christian ethics. But as Hitler's regime grew in strength, Bonhoeffer watched in horror as his fellow citizens, professors, clergy, doctors, and intellectuals, began to support or remain silent in the face of evil. He realized something devastating: education and intelligence were not safeguards against moral collapse. If anything, they sometimes made people better at justifying their surrender. From a Nazi prison cell in 1943, Bonhoeffer wrote his most haunting words. "Against stupidity, we are defenseless. Neither protests nor force accomplish anything here. Reasoning is of no use. Facts that contradict personal prejudices can simply be disbelieved. And when facts are irrefutable, they are just pushed aside as inconsequential." The difference between evil and stupidity. Evil, Bonhoeffer argued, is self-destructive. It knows it's wrong. It festers in secrecy and eventually breaks down under the weight of guilt, opposition, or exposure. But stupidity, functional, systemic stupidity, believes it is doing good. It wears the mask of virtue, making it completely immune to correction. That's what makes it so terrifying. Stupidity is not a mental handicap. It is a surrender of the will to understand. And more often than not, it serves power. In Bonhoeffer's own words, the fact that the stupid person is often stubborn must not blind us to the fact that he is not independent, he is under the sway of something stronger. The social roots of intellectual surrender. Bonhoeffer observed that stupidity is not primarily a psychological issue, but a sociological one. It doesn't arise in isolation but flourishes in groups, movements, and institutions. The individual becomes submerged in the collective, parroting slogans, adopting ideologies, and losing the capacity for critical thought. He was describing mass conformity decades before social science caught up. In the 1950s, Solomon Asch demonstrated this same principle. In his conformity experiments, participants were placed in a group where everyone gave obviously wrong answers to simple questions. Despite knowing the truth, 75% of participants conformed at least once. Why? Because the discomfort of standing alone was greater than the discomfort of being wrong. Now add social media to the equation. Echo chambers and algorithmic stupidity. In the digital age, conformity has been automated. Algorithms on platforms like Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok are designed not to inform, but to engage. And what engages us is not careful reasoning, but emotional stimulation, tribal identity, and confirmation of what we already believe. A 2018 study from MIT revealed that false information spreads 6 times faster than truth on Twitter. Why? Because falsehoods are often more novel, more emotionally charged, and more satisfying to believe. Bonhoeffer warned us that stupidity thrives when people stop thinking and start reacting. Today, social media doesn't just make thinking optional, it punishes it. Critical voices are drowned out by outrage. Nuance is lost in a sea of memes and hashtags. And the machine keeps turning, rewarded by our clicks, likes, and shares. Functional stupidity, how systems reward ignorance. Modern economists and psychologists have coined a term that mirrors Bonhoeffer's theory, functional stupidity. It describes people who suppress critical thinking, not out of laziness, but because doing so helps them function within their institutions. In corporate settings, employees avoid asking hard questions because it threatens their career. In media, journalists avoid complex analysis because it doesn't get clicks. In politics, candidates simplify or lie because nuanced truth doesn't win elections. And so our institutions begin to reward intellectual shortcuts. The result? People who know better do worse. Why we stop thinking? Our brains are not built for constant skepticism. They're built for speed, survival, and social bonding. We evolved to trust our tribe, react quickly, and avoid discomfort. This served our ancestors well. But in today's complex world, it backfires. Leon Festinger's theory of cognitive dissonance explains why. When faced with information that contradicts our beliefs, our brains experience stress. To relieve that stress, we either change our beliefs, or we reject the information. Most of the time, we choose the latter. Especially when we're tired, anxious, or overwhelmed. And our current economic systems make sure we stay that way. When people are juggling multiple jobs, buried in debt, and drowning in information, deep thinking becomes a luxury they cannot afford. What emerges is rational ignorance, the idea that it's more efficient to stay uninformed than to sort through the noise. Bonhoeffer understood this decades ago. He saw that people stop thinking not because they are stupid, but because the cost of thinking has become too high. From propaganda to precision weaponry. Bonhoeffer witnessed the rise of Nazi propaganda through radio and newspapers. But what he couldn't have foreseen was the rise of AI-driven manipulation. We're now entering an era where artificial intelligence can analyze your deepest emotional triggers, your fears, your doubts, your cognitive biases, and weaponize them in real time. Every scroll, every pause, every emotional reaction is data that makes the system smarter at bypassing your rational mind. We are not just fighting propaganda anymore. We are facing artificial stupidity, an algorithmic system designed to exploit our deepest psychological weaknesses. How do we resist? Bonhoeffer did not believe that resistance was easy. He called it costly grace, the courage to think, to speak, and to act ethically when doing so demands a price. He believed that real resistance required intellectual courage, a rare virtue in any age. Today, that courage looks like this. 1. Practice intellectual friction. Seek out thoughtful arguments from people who disagree with you. Don't enter the conversation to win, but to test the strength of your ideas. The goal isn't to change your mind automatically, but to build the habit of scrutiny. 2. Embrace productive ignorance. When you feel absolutely certain about something, ask yourself, what evidence would change my mind? If you can't think of any, you may be caught in a cognitive trap. 3. Pause before you share. Before posting or reacting online, take a moment. Fact check. Ask, am I sharing this because it's true, or because it feels good? 4. Say, I don't know. In a culture that rewards confident ignorance, admitting uncertainty is a revolutionary act. It reclaims your intellectual autonomy. 5. Build mental bandwidth. Advocate for systems that reduce economic stress. When people aren't constantly worried about survival, they regain the mental space to reflect, analyze, and grow. Thinking is easier when survival isn't in question. A challenge from the past to the present. Bonhoeffer's final question remains the most haunting of all. Who stands fast? Who stands firm when the world demands conformity? When truth becomes costly? When comfort seduces us into silence? The answer isn't found in superior intelligence. It's found in moral courage and daily practice. In our willingness to think critically, question authority, and remain human in the face of dehumanizing systems. The real battle, not between good and evil, but between thinking and surrender. We are often taught that the central conflict in life is the eternal war between good and evil. Stories, religions, and history books frame this struggle as a moral binary, the righteous against the wicked, the heroes against the villains. But Dietrich Bonhoeffer, writing from a Nazi prison cell in 1943, saw something far more dangerous, something more silent, more seductive, and more destructive than evil itself. He saw that the real battle isn't always between good and evil. The real battle is between thinking and surrender. And what makes this battle so insidious is that surrender often feels like freedom. The seduction of certainty. Certainty is comforting. Simplicity is seductive. We crave resolution. Our minds yearn for a clean, stable narrative that tells us who we are, what is true, and who the enemy is. Thinking, real thinking, is slow, painful, and filled with doubt. It requires holding contradictory ideas in tension. It demands that we sit with discomfort, admit uncertainty, and risk being wrong. That's not easy. It never has been. So we reach for shortcuts. We adopt beliefs handed to us by those we trust. We repeat phrases we didn't question. We confuse agreement with understanding and emotional validation with truth. And gradually, the thinking muscle atrophies. Bonhoeffer recognized this pattern in Nazi Germany, where citizens, many of them educated, religious, and seemingly moral, surrendered their minds to the comforting simplicity of a totalitarian narrative. They weren't monsters. They were ordinary people who had stopped thinking. And in doing so, they became complicit in extraordinary evil. When thinking becomes dangerous. The tragedy of intellectual surrender is that it often masquerades as virtue. People believe they are being loyal, patriotic, or moral when they repeat what their tribe believes. They believe they are being wise when they dismiss complexity in favor of tradition or ideology. They feel righteous when they shut out dissent, convinced that doubt is dangerous and that certainty is strength. But this is not strength. It is intellectual captivity dressed as conviction. And today, the tools of surrender are more powerful than ever. We live in a world engineered to exploit our hunger for certainty. Social media platforms, news algorithms, and AI-driven content systems are not designed to make us wise, they are designed to make us reactive. The more certain you are, the more you click. The more emotional you are, the more you share. The more tribal you are, the more profitable you become. In this world, thinking, deep, honest, uncomfortable thinking, is not encouraged. It's penalized. Which is why Bonhoeffer's insight is more urgent than ever. The moment we stop thinking, we stop being fully human. Reclaiming the mind, reclaiming ourselves. If human dignity is tied to anything, it is tied to our capacity for independent thought. Every totalitarian regime in history has understood this. Control the mind, and you don't need chains. Control the narrative, and you don't need guns. Control perception, and people will walk willingly into the prison of their own making. Bonhoeffer saw how dangerous this was. And he saw how rare it was to find people who would resist, not with violence, but with integrity. Not with slogans, but with thought. His famous question, "Who stands fast?" was not a rhetorical flourish. It was a cry of the soul. In a world that pressures you to conform, who will dare to think? Who will risk the loneliness of truth over the comfort of consensus? The answer is not found in intelligence or education. It is found in courage. Because thinking, when it is most needed, is always an act of courage. Why surrender feels like freedom. Here's the paradox: intellectual surrender feels like liberation. No more doubt. No more tension. No more responsibility to investigate, to challenge, to wrestle with uncomfortable truths. Just certainty. Just clarity. Just the warm embrace of a group that affirms what you already believe. But that is not freedom. That is anesthesia. True freedom comes not from certainty, but from the willingness to live with uncertainty. To ask hard questions. To seek truth, even when it's painful. To change your mind when the evidence demands it. That is real dignity. That is real humanity. And that is why thinking itself, in this age of engineered stupidity, has become a revolutionary act. Your challenge this week. So here's what I challenge you to do, something deceptively simple, but profoundly powerful. Choose one belief you hold strongly. It might be political. It might be personal. It might be spiritual or scientific. Then, spend just 30 minutes looking for the most intelligent arguments against it. Not to torture yourself. Not to become confused or disoriented. But to test your intellectual resilience. To sharpen your clarity. To train your mind to hold tension instead of retreating into certainty. If your belief survives that scrutiny, you'll hold it more deeply and honestly. You will own it, not because it was handed to you, but because you wrestled with it. If your belief does not survive, if you find yourself moved, challenged, or unsettled, that is not weakness. It is growth. It means you are alive. Awake. Thinking. It means you are becoming. Truth is not a possession, it's a pursuit. One of the greatest illusions of our age is that truth is something you can own. That you can carry it in a meme, shout it in a slogan, or post it in a comment. But truth is not a possession. It is a pursuit. It is something you move toward. Something you refine. Something you uncover slowly, painfully, in the friction of opposing ideas and the humility of honest inquiry. People who think they already have the truth stop seeking it. People who understand how fragile and precious truth is keep looking, keep listening, keep thinking. That's the difference between intellectual arrogance and intellectual courage. Standing fast in a conforming world. Let's be the kind of people who stand fast. Not because we're better or smarter than anyone else. But because we recognize what's at stake. We understand that thinking is not just an intellectual exercise, it is a moral responsibility. In an age that rewards tribal certainty and punishes independent thought, choosing to reflect, to question, and to grow is a profound form of resistance. You don't have to be a scholar or a philosopher to resist the tide. You just have to care more about truth than you care about comfort. You just have to choose curiosity over conformity. Evidence over emotion. Depth over reaction. Humanity over hysteria. And that choice, the choice to think when the world wants you to react, is how you reclaim your dignity in a system designed to strip it from you. The high price of being human. Bonhoeffer was executed for his resistance. But his true legacy is not found in how he died, it's found in how he thought. He refused to become a puppet. He refused to surrender his moral clarity for social comfort. He chose the painful path of independence over the easy road of compliance. And in doing so, he preserved something sacred, the ability to remain human in an inhuman age. Today, the challenge is different, but no less urgent. We are not being forced into submission at gunpoint. We are being lured into it by convenience, comfort, and algorithms that whisper. You already know everything you need to know. Don't question. Don't explore. Just agree. But we must resist. Because the price of human dignity, then and now, is eternal vigilance. Not against enemies out there, but against the soft, numbing voice inside that says, it's easier not to think. So I ask you, what is one belief you're willing to question this week? What is one certainty you've held that you're willing to test, not because you doubt your integrity, but because you value truth more than pride? What is one moment where you can choose curiosity instead of reaction? Reflection instead of outrage? Because every time you make that choice, you do more than protect your mind. You protect the possibility of human wisdom. In a world of noise, reaction, and artificial manipulation, that is no small thing. That is everything. Final word. If this message has stirred something in you, if it has made you uncomfortable or curious or just a little more awake, share it. Not with everyone. Just with someone who values thought over noise. Let's build a quiet revolution,